One thing that I find really interesting and find to be part of the compelling case that esports will be the future is a lot of traditional sports team owners have bought esports teams, right? So maybe like I would love to hear from you a little bit about that and just why you really see esports as being the future and moving into the mainstream, or what the case is for that.
Yeah, I've worked on like dozens of those deals, right? So I've been in the room with the sports team owner time and time again as they're expressing why it's interesting to them. And they're, depending on who you're talking about, there are a bunch of reasons why, cross promotion, engage younger audiences, whatever. But across the board, if there's one thing that I think is at least in the back of everyone's mind, it's that at some point someone paid $100 million for an NBA franchise and everyone thought that person was crazy. Fast forward to today and the worst NBA franchise is worth $1 billion. So there's a little bit of schmuck insurance here of like the writing is on the wall, this is going to be popular and like I have an opportunity to get on the ground floor. So why don't I just like plant a flag there and see where this goes, right? And where this is going, 100% that is inarguable, is full mainstream penetration. So you've both made the point that we're not there yet. We're not there yet in the US. We are there in certain places. So Korea, South Korea is kind of the mecca of esports. It's where a lot of this was born, and it's full cultural penetration in South Korea, right? I mean, you talked about football being like that, Zach, in the US, the quarterback of the football team in the small town in Texas is like guaranteed to be the most popular kid at the school. Well, like the best League of Legends player is like guaranteed to be the most popular kid at the Korean high school, right? And where are they going to hang out? They're going to hang out in PC bungs, which are basically cafe/bars where you can hang out, drink, have fun with your friends and play games. And it's just a huge part of Korean culture. And there are places, China's another one where the mainstream penetration is far ahead there than it is here. The most popular League of Legends player in China is sponsored by Nike already, right? There are places where that's already happened. Now, it has not happened for the most part in the US, and we are trending very much up, right? So Ninja's the most famous gamer, most famous Western gamer on planet Earth. He's a former Halo professional player, former esports player or athlete, depending on what term you want to use, who became very popular along with the game Fortnite. And he's been on the cover of ESPN, the magazine, and he was part of a New Year's Eve Times Square thing, and he has his own line with Adidas, and he is insanely famous, right? I mean, he's a very well-known person, particularly among younger generations. Now, he straddles the gaming esports line, right? He's not an active esports professional player anymore. He's a former pro turned full-time content creator, right? But the ceiling of how famous a gamer can be is already pretty high, and it's just going to keep going up, right? I talked about us being in the bottom half of the second inning, this thing, pick an arbitrary age. Everyone 40 years old or younger grew up in a world where video games even existed, basically, right? So that means like well over half the world population grew up without them, and we convert these people all the time. There are people older than 40 who didn't grow up with games who start playing games later or become esports fans, but it's hard. But the thing is, in the long run, I don't need to convert them, right? I frequently make a joke that pisses people off, which is every day a baseball fan dies and 2 esports fans are born, right? Median age of a baseball fan is in the 50s, right? The overwhelming majority of my audience is under 35. So every day, more esports fans are born, and that's why I'm 100% convinced that in 30 years, when we're listing the biggest sports in the world, we're going to say soccer and we're going to say a video game, because we're already on this trajectory. The writing is on the wall. It was on the wall then. I said the exact same thing in a partner meeting at the third largest law firm in Seattle when I started my career, and I started building a practice that all the old white dudes at my firm were like, what the hell is going on? And I said, this is what's going on. Like, this is the data. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. And there were people there who supported me, but a lot of people who didn't, right? I went out and kind of forged my own entrepreneurial path for a reason. I said it in a talk in 2016, and I'll keep saying it. Like, this is where this is all going. It's going up into the right. In 30 years, the most famous esports players in the US will be, famous in the same way that an NBA player is famous. This is just inevitable. The thesis that people want to watch other people play video games, open, shut, done.
I'm curious. I think video games, Andrew wrote about this in his book, is something a lot of men are attracted to. But I also have this vision of one of the first sports where men and women can compete against each other without the limitations of physical traits, and like on relatively equal ground. I guess the definition of equal ground is that, are you guys seeing gender diversity and more women joining the sport, or I'm curious demographics and who's playing.
So by and large, we're not, and it's a huge problem. But to start with the premise, it's not correct to say that gamers are mostly or are like, predominantly men, right? Of the 3 billion gamers in the world, somewhere between 40 and 45% of them are women, depending on what market research study you're looking at. Now, that is all gaming, right? There are certain sections of the population that are deeply interested in certain types of gaming. Like if you want to know the player base of Candy Crush, it is overwhelmingly women, right? And there are millions of people that play Candy Crush, right? So the eSports titles, the League of Legends and Counter-Strike of the world, still are predominantly men. And there are the layers of this problem. We could do an hour on gender discrimination in gaming, and it's something I try to actively work on every chance I get. And so here's what it looks like, right? Like, why are there fewer female engineers than there are male engineers, right? It starts from a very young age when parents tell their, daughters and sons what they are and are not supposed to do. Son, don't play with this doll. Go play this sport. Girl, stop playing this video game, start doing this other thing instead, right? It's unbelievable how much these cultural norms affect us and affect what we're interested in from a very young age. And these things play out over the course of over your entire life. A girl that is super into video games in high school is going to be treated differently, right? There are cultural norms that tell her she's a nerd, she's an outcast, right? She's an outlier, she's not doing what she's supposed to be doing. And it's a real problem. And then you get into the games themselves and the harassment is unbelievable. I mean, any game where there are voice communications, if you have friends who are women who play games, ask them what their experience is like, and they will have one of two answers. I don't use voice communications in the game because I just can't. I don't want to be harassed. I'm over it. Or two, I do it and I'm constantly have my teammates harassing me, saying horrible things to me, intentionally losing games because because they're on the same team as a girl. It is horrible. And then they face harassment. You do get through all of this stuff to be a professional female gamer in some capacity in a game or a content creator or whatever, and you are harassed constantly on your social media handles, on your Twitch stream. The parties in power are not doing enough job to correct this, but if we're being honest about it, this is a problem that goes so deep. There are so many layers to why these things happen, and it's, there are a lot of very good things that are happening, girls who code, right, in projects like this who are trying to push the bounds of getting more gender diversity in professions where there is no reason why they are dominated by men, but or no one reason why, but there are, all these layers of the problem, and it very much exists in my industry as well. I hate it. I try to do what I can about it, but yeah, Zach, the premise is correct. There is no reason why a man should be better at League of Legends than a woman, or a man should be better at Counter-Strike than a woman, but when you look at the professional player base of these games, they are almost exclusively men. Some of them are 100% men. There are no women playing in the North American League of Legends Championship Series in North, and that's a problem.
New and innovative technologies, the cutting edge. Sadly, a lot of times when that is when they in the nascent stages, when they're being built and the process is being built, and that sort of thing, when it's predominantly men, the issues you're highlighting aren't addressed early on. And so then you have this entire system to fight against to even rewire it once it gets a little more popular.
I was a computer science minor in college, and I was sort of aware of this problem then because I had professors who were into gaming or into gaming platforms and would talk about the harassment. And I know in conferences, it's always been really bad at gaming conferences, and doxing is a phenomenon that's very prominent in the gaming community, and especially towards women. So this was, probably 7 years ago or whatever, that this was sort of at the forefront of things I was thinking about and knew about. But I haven't kept up with it. Like, are you seeing improvements at least, as much as it still has a long way to go?
At the margins, we are seeing improvement. I mean, I don't want to say that we've seen no improvement because we have. There's some thoughtfulness around this. I mean, Riot Games, for example, it's not just at the professional player base, it's throughout the gaming industry, right? If you want to work in gaming and you're a woman, the amount of adversity that you are facing is significantly higher than for your male peers. Anyone who denies that is an idiot. And there were, for example, there were active lawsuits against Riot Games, and there was a ton discussed about the culture of Riot Games. And there were some things about acute discrimination, but there were also things where like they had a bar as part of their admission process where it's like, you have to be a hardcore gamer. Otherwise we're not really interested in hiring you. And if you do that, if you set a hardcore gamer bar, which on its face seems like a neutral criteria. We are a hardcore gaming company. We want hardcore gamers working here. You are neglecting the reality that a man is far more likely to be a hardcore gamer because of all of the other things I talked about leading up to the moment in time where this person applied to work at Riot Games. And so, Riot culture has changed meaningfully. It's not perfect. There was a lawsuit filed recently against the CEO for gender discrimination. So, which is, it's an allegation. I'm not saying it's true or false, right? I have no idea, but it's not, we're far from perfect on that stuff, but there have been some improvements. I'm always hesitant to give us too much of a pat on the back for this because the problem is still so bad. And I literally cannot have a conversation with my female friends who work in the industry without hearing more and more stories about what it is like to just be them and the challenges that they face on a daily basis, the discrimination in a business meeting. I'm on the board of an amazing company that has 2 female founders. And if I attend a meeting with them, they are the founders. It is their company. I am just there, right? And we're across from a man in a meeting. 1 out of 2 times, they'll have a conversation with me. I'm like, you're asking about their company. Talk to them, right? Why is this I'm here to support. I can add some context value, whatever. But this is a conversation between you and these 2 amazing women, and I'm along for this ride. And it is, as much as we've come a long way over the course of the last 5 years, Carly, we still have so much more to go.
That's really frustrating and makes some sense.